I joined Mencap back in March 2015. When we joined, the situation there was quite bad, in fairness, in the sense of we had high turnover. I think it was around about 35% when I joined. Our turnover voluntary was at 35%, and our first year turnover all overall was nearly 50%. So basically that meant everyone we recruited in the first year, half of them left. So it was a big challenge. So we were given a brief to reduce that and try and get it down to a reasonable amount so we could cut across the amount of volumes we were actually doing. So it was twofold. We had to look at what our employer branding was, but we also had to look at what the ATS was and was it fit for purpose. It was quite quickly identified that it wasn't, in all honesty. It really, really wasn't. It didn't integrate with our the payroll system, so it was all a manual process which is open to error and prone to mistakes happening. We had 8-page application forms at the time as well, which were really helpful. So I think we coined the phrase we could do a bank loan quicker than you could do an application in Mencap. So for us that was a really bad thing. And we're all spending a huge amount on job boards, which obviously have a purpose, but we were spending 6 figures a year on job boards and having no idea if they were returning an investment to us whatsoever. So for us it was looking at all those different parts really. The other side of it as well, we had a very high dropout rate of our candidates. So we did 4,000 offers a year, and of those 25% would drop out, which is absolutely massive. I don't know for the people who experience high levels like that, but for us it all looked very negative and quite poor. The difficulty we had was our hiring managers and stakeholders loved the system that we used to use. So we used it, I won't mention who it was, it's not fair, but we used a system that everyone seemed to think was fantastic and it had for a long time. It had no functionality, the website was terrible, but the hiring manager portal was fabulous apparently. So we had a big old challenge. I noticed on the spreadsheet was sent through from Tash before we started, a number of people talking about stakeholder engagement, and I will come on to that and try and cover off what we did, but also there's a slide on here what we did wrong, which I think is a really big factor for everyone in this room if you are thinking about changing ATSs, what not to do, and Mencap can give the blueprint for that, to be fair. So, but the first thing we did, we sat and developed our recruitment strategy, and we looked at what was happening. So it was quite apparent very quickly that the market was changing. We're out of a recession, the unemployment rates are dropping very, very quickly. The volume recruitment is getting harder and harder, so the war for talent, as people call it, or whatever it needs to be, was becoming increasingly difficult. So we had to move with the times. We had to look at what job seekers were doing. We had to find out where they were, what they were looking at online. And the technology behind that we looked into something called mosaic profiling. So has anyone come across that before in this room? You've heard of it? Okay, fair enough. So I don't know the ins and outs of it. I'm nowhere near technical enough to give you a full detail. But what mosaic profiling does is basically goes out there and looks at the core group of people you want to recruit into your business. So we gave an organisation a brief of support workers. These are the people we want to attract to our roles. We want to know where they are, where they spend time online, where they shop, what they do, how to get them, how to attract them basically. So we can move away from the traditional methods from job boards, but go into sort of more targeted advertising. So if we know that the predominant support worker group, people that are on sort of minimum wage and just above, are shopping and spending time, we can start to target them through our marketing and our campaigns and flashing up. So we're attracting a passive audience, but also an active audience as well. And that was a really important thing. So we did that across the country initially on hotspots, that was on the last page. But it really built a profile of the types of people we want to attract to our organisation. And what was really clever about this was that we could basically then go and actually fish in the right ponds rather than just putting adverts out on LinkedIn, Total Jobs, CV Library, Reed, all the usual suspects. We're then able to really target our adverts, where they went to and who we actually wanted to recruit into the organisation. So that was really clever. But what wasn't? We had no way of tracking them. So we had no idea if it was working, not working. We had no idea where they got to in an application process. So that was a lot of the things we were considering. So going back to what do we do? So recruitment strategy. If anyone was at Telford the other week when in-house were there was a really good presentation on recruitment strategy. I won't bore you with that today, but what we had to consider was what does good look like? What needs to be done? Where do we want to be? And what are our initial objectives? We had to review our current activities, so the attraction strategy, the employer brand, the ATS, our candidate engagement and onboarding. And then the really difficult bit was the organisational buy-in. And the actual exec buy-in, so our directors, they were keen for a new system. They decided, they identified we needed one. The difficulty we had over 1,000 hiring managers and admins that were using a system that they loved. So to try and get them, well, they thought they loved, so to try and get them actually onboarded into how we change, that was absolute, well, it was a nightmare, to tell you the truth. So going back to stakeholder buying, we identified we needed a new system. So what we did, went out on the road, We went and sat into all the regional management team meetings. We discussed what people's challenges were with recruitment, and there was a common theme coming across. It's hard to find people, it's hard to get people onboarded, it's hard to do these things. So what we didn't go is say we're going to go for a new ATS. What we went out and said, tell us about recruitment, what works for you, what doesn't work for you. And what was slowly but surely coming through was a theme that it doesn't work. What we're doing isn't working. We're struggling to recruit. We've got high agency spend. We need to attract more people. So on the basis of doing that, we sort of fact found them, I suppose, in the sense of doing the focus groups, the enabling groups. And like I say, went back out and said, you spoke, we've listened. That's what we did. So right, we knew what a new ATS, but they didn't. So we went out and said, look, what do you need? They came back and said this. We said, we've got a solution. Here it is. We didn't want to change ATS, but hey presto, we're going to have to because you guys have told us it doesn't work for you. So looking at the difficulties, we rushed. We went too fast. We launched it in 3 months, which wasn't enough time to change an organisation stuck in ways, basically. A lot of our managers have been here for a number of years, and like I say, like the system, we didn't re-educate our hiring managers. That was a challenge. And we didn't communicate the launch early enough and concisely enough to the people. And the other thing that we forgot about, much to employees' displeasure, because we've had to do a lot of work with them afterwards, and they advised us to do this, we forgot about the candidate and what the experience was going to be for them. So we thought about what it looked like for us to use as a function, what it looked like for us to actually process people through. We didn't think about the candidate experience predominantly, and we focused too much, like I say, on the stakeholders and the functionality, and we also forgot about onboarding, which over 3 years we have revisited, and I'll come on to it again, but the onboarding piece now and the engagement through our candidates is absolutely fantastic. So I'll just cover some stats off rather than waiting to the end, but I was saying to you, we lost 25% of our offers. We now lose 11% of our offers, which is a massive turnaround. Our turnover rates, I think, like I said, we're 30-odd%. They're now down to 18% for voluntary turnover. And in the first year of people joining, we're still high. We're at 30%, but we're working on that as we go along. So all this was built out of what we can see from our employer brand work and also attracting the right people through Mosaic profiling, but also with the work we've done on the back end of the system, which is absolutely fantastic now. So we worked with an external agency, which was quite a brave move for us. And again, working really closely with ePloy, we integrated the employer brand into their site, into our jobs pages. But again, the important thing that we couldn't do was tracking. So I can't think the technical terms, and I'm sure people might be able to help me out. But we put what they call stars behind all of our different points and click points in our application forms. So if someone was to come from Read and click apply, we could track that person. But the great thing about it is not just track if they applied for the job. We could actually track and see where they got to in the application stage. So did they drop out halfway through an application form? Did they go to first interview? Did they get to second interview? Did they get offered? Did they start? How long did they stay with us? And that tracking piece is fantastic. So if I can give anyone a recommendation, a lot of people I speak to focus on where people are coming from, but they don't focus on where they go to in the process. And what was really key to us when we introduced this tracking was we found very quickly that people were getting bored in the applications, we assumed. We cut our application down considerably, but what we were actually finding is we were still, I think one stat in a month was 7,000 application starts and only 2,500 application finishes. So if you're ever thinking, is your application good? That probably tells you. So for us, we had to look at what the application forms were, but the challenge again is there from our stakeholders. You can imagine the types of roles we're recruiting for, support workers that are supporting vulnerable adults. We have to make sure that we're not cutting corners. We have to ensure we're running a safe recruitment campaign, and we have to ensure we're getting the right people. So there's a really fine balance between, and like you were saying earlier about the online side of it, you have to make sure the site's flexible enough for people that are on the train, doing the commute, to be able to get access to your site and apply for a job quickly. For us, the application form, the stats that we generated off the back of the tracking, brilliant. Because ultimately for us, we're then able to tell where we've got problems in the system. So are people dropping out offer stage? Are they dropping out here, here or here? And if they are, what tweaks can we make and what can we look at? And again, your relationship with your ATS is absolutely pivotal to that, because when the changes need to be made, they need to be open and flexible enough to be able to change the system as you go along. So for us, that was really important. So we looked at audience maps, that was Mosaic profiling, the types of people we wanted, the demographics of them, the attitudes, hobbies, media consumption, again, so we can get our adverts out into all different parameters. But for us, the tracking and reporting, that is the biggest thing that I learned from this. We didn't focus on it enough, and we were spending a lot of money on where we're at. And this year, our marketing budget, we've been able to save nearly 37% on last year's costs, but advertising more locations by tracking and reporting. So that for us was an absolute immense point. Going back to the employer brand, that was a really big thing for us to launch. We went out there to look at the organisation, look at what they wanted to do. We did focus groups, we spoke to people, and we went with a thing called Careers in Care initially, which was wrong. We went with something called Work with Feeling, because that's what our organisation was telling us. When we went out and spoke to our colleagues, what did they tell us they were doing? They were working, they were feeling what they did, they cared about what they did. Coming to work mattered. And we wanted to get that branding out there, but in terms of the technology behind it, we wanted to make sure it got to the right audience, which comes back to that mosaic profiling. So we did a new campaign, which was called Work with Feeling. We also thought about our attrition rate being at, however much it was, 40% in the first year. We thought we wanted to attract younger people to our organisation. Big mistake, they're the biggest job hops. So we were aiming at an 18 to 30 marketplace, and we quickly realised that wasn't the right thing to do. We decided we needed to go for everybody. So we wanted to attract everyone to our organisation, which again was really important from the profiling we did. It costs a lot of money at the front end, but then the data you've got continually is absolutely fantastic. So we could actually then pinpoint who we wanted to target, what we wanted to do. And these are just some of the things we've done around it, some of the things that came out. These are real sort of phrases, people proud of what we're doing, excited about the future. You know, really powerful messages. The other thing we felt we were doing when we've looked at our attraction strategy was we're giving a really nice warm feeling of what it's like to work at Mencap, which is great. And you see a picture of, you know, John with his Norwich City scarf on, going to the football with his support worker, and that was going out to people, and they're going, oh, it's a great job, that, fantastic. What it wasn't telling you was the hard element to the job, the personal care you'd have to do, the support element to the role. We had to get a really clear message out there in the right way to the right people that were saying, look, it's a great job, but come and, you know, think about what it means behind the scenes as well. You know, the great thing about the new ATS is we can track what our guys are doing, we can see what the recruiters are up to, we can build, this isn't a KPI spreadsheet in fairness, but we can build the KPI so we know what the recruiters are working on, where they're at, what the hotspots are. The time to hire stuff is really, really important. We have to move faster in this marketplace, so you can see where managers are slowing us down in the process. So our SLA is to get an advert out within 24 hours of getting it from a hiring manager on the hiring manager portal. The next stage of that is we get it out and get it live, but we process all our candidates through within 24 hours of receiving them, and then our managers, what we found, were sitting there, we see back to the re-education piece, for 2 weeks before they'd interview them, and then they sit there and interview them, and 2 weeks later they go, well, can we offer them a job? Well, they've gone. Because everyone else has moved a lot quicker. And what's great about this system, which we couldn't do before, we can now actually give some meaningful data back to the organisation and say, look where you've got your recruitment problems, look at your hiring managers' ways of working, we need to change that and upset what they're doing and disturb them in terms of actually getting them trained properly to do proper recruitment campaigns. So this has been an absolute game changer for us, it really has, in the sense of the stats it gives us, the data it gives us, and the genuine information it gives back to the organisation.